Most people are chasing after someone, a friend, a partner, a crowd, a following. Why? Because they believe they are incomplete. They believe someone else will make them whole. This illusion has cost humanity dearly. Let me tell you this clearly, you are not a half looking for another half. You are a full being, a complete life. You were not born with a missing piece, you were born whole. Somewhere along the way, society convinced you otherwise. They told you, you need love to be happy. You need friends to feel secure. You need validation to feel enough. But these are all borrowed emotions. And borrowed things can be taken away. If your inner climate is always determined by what's happening outside, you will always remain a slave. Slave to other people's words, slave to other people's actions, slave to the world's moods. You may find 1,000 people and still feel lonely. Or you may sit alone and feel the fullness of existence pulsing within you. That is the power of being aligned with your own self. Loneliness is a disease, but aloneness is freedom. It means your joy is no longer an accident. It means your peace is not negotiable. If someone can make you feel good, they can also make you feel terrible. That's not freedom, that's dependency. Real freedom is when you are the master of your own emotions. When you don't need anyone to complete you because you are already overflowing. What you seek in people, you must first find within. Love, joy, peace, fulfillment, these are not relationships you have with others. These are relationships you have with your own existence. If you become pleasant inside, your world becomes pleasant. You don't have to beg for affection, chase validation, or fear being alone. You sit and the universe sits with you. So remember, you don't need anyone to complete you because you were never incomplete. The moment you realize this, you become free. And once you touch the core of who you are, you will never feel alone again. From the moment we arrive into this world, people start whispering into our ears that life is a quest for someone else, that we are born only partially whole and somewhere out there is the person, the situation or the possession that will finally complete us. This belief repeated often enough becomes our reality. We start walking through life like fractured beings with a constant ache, an invisible emptiness, a yearning to find our other half. Some look for it in romantic partners, others in friendships, families or social media likes. Some chase status, fame or wealth, hoping that these external labels will finally make them feel whole inside. But let me ask you, have you ever seen a tree growing halfway? Does the sun rise only 60% and wait for the moon to complete it? Look at nature. Everything comes as a full expression. The seed holds the potential of the entire tree. The ocean doesn't search for another body to become vast. So why do you think your existence is any less? This idea that someone else will make you whole is not love, it's bondage, it's a trap. Because the moment you believe you are incomplete, you become needy. And the moment you become needy, your joy is no longer in your hands, it's in someone else's pocket. This is the tragedy of humanity. We have forgotten that our well-being is not rooted in another person's presence, it is rooted in our own aliveness. You see, the body is complete, the mind, though turbulent, is yours. The breath flows on its own. Your heart beats without needing instruction. There is an intelligence within you that is far more profound than any person who could walk into your life. But instead of exploring this inner cosmos, most people are busy looking for someone to decorate the surface. They keep saying, "I feel empty without you." What they really mean is, "I have never dared to explore myself fully." The truth is, you are not born with a missing piece. You are not a puzzle that someone else needs to solve. You are not an unfinished story waiting for a character to arrive. You are the author, the narrator, and the entire book. But the world is clever. It knows that if you ever realize your own completeness, you'll stop being a customer. You'll stop being a slave. So it keeps feeding you this idea. Once you find the right person, the right job, the right situation, then you'll be enough. But I'm telling you, you are already enough. You are already a complete being. The only thing missing is your realization of it. If you observe your life carefully, you'll see that from the time you were a child, you were told, if you do this, you'll be happy. If you become that, you'll be happy. So you started walking, sometimes running in pursuit of something. A toy, a degree, a job, a relationship, a dream. And every time you reached what you thought was the destination, it moved, just like the horizon. Have you ever tried to reach the horizon? It looks like it's just there, a little beyond the fields, just past the hills. But as you walk toward it, it moves. You keep walking, it keeps moving. That's what happens when your happiness is attached to something outside of you. People are endlessly running, not because they're fast, but because the finish line keeps shifting. One moment it's love, the next it's money, then success, then validation, then attention, and all of it feels meaningful until you get it. Then the taste fades and you're hungry again. This is the suffering of a mind that believes happiness is out there. A new car, a better house, a more understanding partner, a higher salary, all of these are fine in themselves, but they were never designed to be the source of your joy. Because what you're seeking isn't out there, it's within. But society doesn't tell you that. The advertisements don't say, "Sit quietly and realize your inner joy." No. They say, buy this, own that, become this, then you'll be happy. It's like digging for water on the surface of a desert. You might get some cool wind, a temporary shade, maybe even a mirage. But it won't quench your thirst. True joy is not a transaction with the outside world. It's not something you extract, it's something you uncover. But for most people, the moment there is a small discomfort inside, loneliness, boredom, anxiety, they instantly look outward. Let me talk to someone, let me scroll, let me distract myself. They treat their inner space like a noisy neighbor they're trying to avoid. But you cannot run away from yourself forever. You see, the more you depend on outer circumstances to feel okay, the more fragile your life becomes. Because the world doesn't move according to your comfort. It moves by its own rhythm. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it shines, sometimes people love you, sometimes they leave. If your happiness rises and falls with these waves, how will you ever feel stable? Imagine tying your inner peace to something as fleeting as someone's mood or a number in your bank account. That's a dangerous game. Happiness that comes from within is stable. It's not loud, it's not explosive, but it's steady. Like a gentle flame that doesn't flicker even when the wind blows. And unless you turn inward and light that flame, you will keep chasing shadows. You will keep walking toward that ever-moving horizon, thinking the next thing will finally be it, but it never is. Most people fear being alone, not because there's something wrong with solitude, but because they've never truly met themselves. They confuse aloneness with loneliness. But these two are worlds apart. Loneliness is a cry, aloneness is a song. Loneliness means you are missing something. It means you are sitting in a room surrounded by silence and feeling as though something vital is absent. That something is supposed to be there to make you feel whole. You want a person, a voice, a message, a presence, but aloneness, that is an entirely different phenomenon. Aloneness is when your presence is so full, so alive, so rich, that there is no one else you need to complete the moment. It's not the absence of company, it's the presence of your being. Most people have never tasted their own company deeply enough to know what that means. The moment they're alone, they reach for their phone, they call someone, open social media, turn on the television, anything but silence, anything but themselves. Because when there's noise, they feel distracted. And distraction for most people has become a poor substitute for peace. But look at nature. The tree stands alone. It does not feel lonely. The mountain stands alone. Is it suffering? The sun rises without needing applause. The moon glows in solitude. They are all in perfect balance. Not because someone is holding their hand, but because they are simply being what they are. You too are a part of that same intelligence, yet you believe you need constant connection to feel complete. This is the tragedy. We have glorified togetherness so much that we've demonized solitude. If you are lonely when you are alone, it means you are in poor company. It means you built a life that only feels alive in the presence of others. But what happens when the world doesn't show up? What happens when no one answers the call? Will you collapse? Aloneness is power. It's the power to be stable when nothing outside is stable. It's the power to generate your own joy without needing to borrow it. It's the power to become so inwardly aligned that even in a crowd, you remain untouched. This kind of presence doesn't come from books or teachings. It comes from sitting quietly day after day, simply watching. Watching the breath, watching the mind, watching how it all moves. And in that watching, something settles, and once it settles, you begin to taste yourself, not the noisy, restless version, but the pure stillness underneath. That is where aloneness lives. That is where the true self begins. Have you ever noticed, on a day when you are joyful, truly at ease within yourself, the same people who usually annoy you seem tolerable, even kind? The same situations that often frustrate you feel manageable, even amusing? Suddenly the world hasn't changed, but your experience of it has shifted So why is that? Because what you call the world is not happening out there, it's being filtered through your perception, through your inner atmosphere. Just like the weather outside influences the way you dress, your inner weather influences the way you interpret everything around you. When the inner climate is cloudy, full of anxiety, anger, fear, or restlessness, even the brightest moment feels dim. A compliment sounds like sarcasm. A peaceful room feels heavy. A friend's silence feels like rejection. But if your inner sky is clear, if there is space, light and balance, then even challenges feel like opportunities. You laugh more easily, you forgive more quickly, you notice beauty in things you used to overlook. Most people are trying to fix the world without ever checking the lens through which they are seeing it. They want better people, better jobs, better systems, better weather, better traffic, but tell me, how many things will you try to fix? The more you try to arrange the outside world to suit your preferences, the more life will frustrate you, because the outside world is not designed for your comfort. It is designed for its own chaotic, magnificent unfolding. But the inside, that is your domain. That's where your real power lies. You don't have control over the wind, but you can adjust the sails. You don't have control over how others speak, but you can master how you receive it. You don't have control over every event, but you absolutely have control over how deeply it disturbs your inner stillness. If you walk into a room with incense burning, the room feels fragrant. But if you carry a foul smell on your clothes, no matter where you go, the world stinks. In the same way, if your inner space is polluted with resentment, worry or negativity, you'll find something wrong wherever you look. Your experience of life is not created by life itself, it is created by how you are. And this is what most people miss. They believe that peace is something they must seek, chase or negotiate for. But peace is not an achievement. It is a natural result of an inner alignment. When your body is at ease, your mind is calm and your energies are balanced, suddenly the world begins to look more gentle. Not because the world changed, but because you became a more pleasant place to be in. This is not about being indifferent. This is about cultivating such balance within yourself that no matter what life throws at you, you remain untouched, like the sky that watches the storm but is never damaged by it. This might sound difficult to accept at first, especially if you've been betrayed, criticized or abandoned. The natural instinct is to say, but they hurt me. It was their words, their actions, their coldness, their violence. And yes, perhaps their behavior was harsh, even unacceptable. But pain becomes suffering only when you choose to carry it within. What someone does on the outside is their karma. How you respond is yours. Think of it like this: if someone throws a stone and it hits your body, yes, it might bruise. But if someone throws a word and it hits your mind, why should it wound your soul? A word is only sound. A look is just a glance. But you give it meaning, you give it the power to hurt. Without your internal permission, no external force can control your emotional state. This is not about becoming insensitive or cold, it's about becoming aware. aware of how deeply you've outsourced your well-being to other people's behavior. Imagine a life where your peace depends on how others treat you. Then your peace is always at risk. You become like a leaf in the wind, happy when praised, broken when criticized, joyful when accepted, miserable when rejected. This is emotional slavery. You're constantly being tugged by invisible strings, strings you handed to others long ago, perhaps unknowingly. Ask yourself, how many people are living inside your head rent-free? How many voices echo inside you, not because they are still speaking, but because you never let go of what they said? A stranger on the street makes a rude remark and it ruins your day. A close one makes a sarcastic comment and you carry it for weeks. But the real question is, why does it hurt so much? Not because of what they said, but because there's already an open wound inside you, waiting for something to poke it. When you are whole within yourself, others' behavior loses the power to shake you. If I call you a name that isn't yours, say I call you Buffalo, you won't feel offended unless somewhere inside a part of you doubts your own identity. If I praise you and you glow with pride, then you are still vulnerable, because tomorrow when I insult you, you will sink. The moment you realize that your inner stability cannot be dictated by outside forces, something profound shifts. You begin to take back ownership of your life. You begin to choose what enters your emotional space and what does not. Someone's bitterness, let it stay with them. Someone's ignorance, let them carry it. Someone's temporary anger, don't make it your permanent. You can be compassionate without being reactive. You can listen without absorbing. You can witness without becoming wounded. This is not suppression, this is strength. The strength of knowing that the only key to your inner world must remain with you. The moment you hand it to someone else, you become a puppet, a slave to their moods, their opinions, their emotional volatility. But when you hold the key, when you stand grounded in your own presence, the world may shout, provoke, tempt or mock, but your response is a conscious choice, not a compulsion. So many times we confuse attachment with love. We say, I can't live without you, we call it romance. We say, you're my everything, and we call it devotion. But if you look a little deeper, beneath the sweet words and poetic phrases, often what we're really saying is, I am terrified of being without you. That's not love, that's fear. And fear is not a foundation for any sacred bond, it is a trap. Real love is liberating, it's expansive, it allows the other to breathe, to grow, to be. But what most people call love is a deep dependency, a psychological handcuff we place on each other decorated with flowers. When you cling to someone, it's not because you love them deeply, it's because you fear being left alone with yourself. And so you wrap your identity around them. Their presence becomes your comfort zone, their attention becomes your drug. You monitor their moods like a weather report, because if they're distant, you feel rejected. If they're silent, you feel abandoned. If they're too happy without you, you feel insecure. This is not love, this is a silent panic, disguised as intimacy. Love without inner stability becomes obsession. And obsession always leads to suffering for both you and the other person. Clinging begins when you believe that your joy, your peace, your sense of worth comes from someone else. And once that belief takes root, you can't help but try to control, manipulate or hold on tightly. You become afraid that any distance, any change, any shift might take your joy away. Because it was never yours to begin with, it was borrowed. That's why people get jealous. That's why they become possessive. That's why relationships often become prisons instead of sanctuaries. Because fear walks in wearing the mask of love. But true love, if you've ever felt even a drop of it, is not about holding on, it's about holding space. When you are full within yourself, when your aloneness is beautiful, not bitter, then your love is not a demand, it's a gift. You're not saying, be mine or I'll break. You're saying, even if you walk away, I remain whole. That is the fragrance of real love. Clinging happens when you haven't met yourself fully. So you cling to someone else, hoping they'll show you who you are. But no one can do that for you. That's an inside job. When you stop clinging, you begin to connect. Because now, the bond is no longer based on fear, it's based on freedom. You're not trying to trap the other, you're simply walking beside them, fully alive in your own being. And strangely, when love is no longer born out of fear, it lasts longer, it deepens, it breathes. Because now, it's not built on possession, it's built on presence. Have you noticed the more you try to suppress something inside you, the louder it becomes? The more you push a thought away, the more it circles back. The more you pretend a feeling doesn't exist, the more it lingers in the background, waiting for a weak moment to strike. This is the paradox of resistance. What you refuse to face gains power over you. Anger, jealousy, sadness, fear, none of these are dangerous by themselves. They are simply energies passing through. But when you resist them, when you push them into the basement of your consciousness, they don't disappear. They wait, they gather strength, and eventually they explode, sometimes in ways that shock even you. Most people are fighting an invisible war within themselves every day. A battle between who they are and who they think they should be. They wear masks, not just for the world, but for their own reflection. They say, I shouldn't feel this, or I shouldn't think like that, and so begins the inner division. Resistance is a form of rejection, rejecting parts of yourself that you haven't yet understood. And anything you reject, you cannot heal. You cannot transform what you are unwilling to acknowledge. Look at a shadow. It only exists because light is being blocked. Similarly, emotional shadows are born when you block awareness. When you label certain emotions as bad, you don't deal with them, you run from them, and in that running, they chase you. You see, healing doesn't come from running. It comes from seeing clearly, not fighting the darkness, but bringing light to it. Not trying to change every thought, but observing it without judgment. The mind has many layers. Sometimes it will show you things you don't like, desires you disapprove of, insecurities you didn't know were still alive. But these are not signs of failure, they are invitations. Invitations to sit with yourself not as an enemy, but as an explorer. The moment you stop resisting, something remarkable happens. The tension starts to dissolve, because now you're not fueling the fire with fear. You're watching it with calm attention, and in that space of non-resistance, what once looked like a monster begins to look like a misunderstood child. Anger softens, sadness speaks, fear reveals its root. The very emotions you were running from become doorways, portals to deeper understanding. But that can only happen if you stop trying to fix everything and start feeling everything. If you stop labeling your inner world as good or bad and start becoming curious. Not how do I get rid of this, but what is this trying to show me? This is where real freedom begins, not from controlling your inner world, but from embracing it as it is, moment by moment. From the moment we're born, we begin to chase approval. A baby smiles and the mother claps, the mind learns. A child draws a picture and gets a gold star, the heart feels worthy. A teenager posts a photo and counts the likes. The identity forms. And slowly we build our sense of self, not from within, but from reflections in other people's eyes. But there's a trap hidden in this, because anything that is given by others can be taken away by others. If someone praises you, you feel high. If they criticize you, you crumble. If they notice you, you feel visible. If they ignore you, you feel invisible. And so your very sense of being becomes a negotiation, not an arrival. You start living like a performer on a stage, constantly adjusting, constantly wondering, was that good enough? You say things not because they are true, but because they will be liked. You act not from your core, but from fear of rejection. You slowly forget who you are and become who others want you to be. This is not freedom, this is psychological imprisonment. A life on a leash, dressed as social acceptance. True freedom is when your sense of who you are is no longer up for vote. When your peace is not up for debate. When your self-worth is not on auction waiting for someone to bid. And the moment you drop the need for validation, you discover something extraordinary. You were already enough, long before anyone noticed you. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or distant. It simply means you stop begging for mirrors to tell you how you look inside. You begin to live from your own center, not from borrowed opinions. Think about it. The most beautiful things in nature don't ask for applause. The sun doesn't ask, was I bright enough today? The trees don't wonder if they're growing fast enough. The ocean doesn't need a round of applause to keep roaring, they are. That's enough. And your very presence here is a miracle. Your breath, your awareness, your capacity to feel and witness and choose. These are not small things, these are divine gifts. But until you recognize your own worth, you will keep looking for scraps of approval from people who are just as lost as you, and when they fail to give it, you'll feel empty again and again. The only way out of this cycle is in. To sit with yourself in full honesty, to look at your own eyes without flinching, to meet yourself not as a role, not as a name, but as a being. pure presence, untouched, unshaken, when you touch that space, even for a moment, you realize, I do not need anyone to approve of me. I do not need anyone to complete me. I am already whole, already free. So, understand this. The moment you stop seeking completion in others, the moment you stop resisting what is within you, and the moment you drop the compulsive need to be seen, loved or praised, a strange kind of silence enters you. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of fullness. A silence that doesn't come from outside, but rises from within, like a mountain that cannot be moved